Hi, Blake again from Florida Orienteering, talking about using SplitsBrowser and Livelox for orienteering training. In the last video, I showed you how to use SplitsBrowser to quickly zero in on the exact legs where you had your biggest problems in a course, and then use Livelox in order to go zero in on that leg and look at how you did it versus how other people did it and figure out what you could have done differently that might have saved you some time. We talked about looking at tracks here in SplitsBrowser, mousing over my track, the green one here, and looking for these large drops like this one from 6 to 7 and this one from 8 to 9 that showed those two legs were problematic for me. Pretty easy to actually do that on a SplitsBrowser chart like this because there are only 4 participants, so it's easy to see what's available and who I should compare myself to. But if I go to something that's a little bit more populated, like if I jump to JROTC Green Mail for this track, you can see there's a whole lot more participants there. And if I show all of these, well, this display gets a little bit more crowded, doesn't it, under those circumstances? It's a little bit harder to see what's going on. I can take out a couple of these tracks at the bottom to sort of spread things out just a little bit more, get a little bit more resolution in some of these high traffic areas here. But still, there's a lot here. There's a lot on this screen that it's harder to tell exactly what to look for. So I want to describe how to do this. How do you, let's say I'm this person right here. This blue one is a nice one because it has a nice big drop here. There's a clear spot right here in the leg from 6 to 7 on the green course. Where this person might have something to learn, where he didn't do so well on that leg and other people did better. So, but there's still a lot of alternative people to compare to here. And keep in mind, this information, the information in SplitsBrowser, is all determined from splits times, which are what you record on the finger sticks. Every time you punch into a station, it remembers the exact second you were there, and then the splits times are computed from that. So anyone who used finger sticks is on SplitsBrowser, but not everyone who's on SplitsBrowser recorded a GPS log. So they might be here in SplitsBrowser, but they might not be in Livelox. So that's something you have to consider. Now, as we go forward in the implementation of Livelox, our goal is to get more and more and more people participating in that, so that that GPS log resource becomes more deeper and richer and more valuable to everybody. But for now, there's not nearly as many people record tracks as use finger sticks, so keep that in mind. So how do we do this? How do we determine who to compare ourselves to? Well, there's a few answers to that question. I'm going to drill into that here a little bit. So whose tracks do you compare to yours? SplitsBrowser shows you which legs to prioritize, because you can see where your big drops are. But who do you compare to? There's lots of different answers to that. One of them, of course, is to compare yourself to top finishers on the entire course, the people who are at the very top of the SplitsBrowser list. These are the runners that you want to be like, right? You want to see what they're doing that you're not doing. In order to do that, to go back to SplitsBrowser, the top finishers are simply the ones at the top of the list here. These are the ones with the overall fastest times. Now keep in mind, overall fastest time does not mean fastest time on every leg. Even the people who had the best overall times had bad legs, like this one here. The top finisher, he didn't do so well on leg 4 to 5. So looking at the top placers in the overall race is one thing, but it's different than necessarily the top placement on any given course, any given leg, let's say. So answer number 2, best times on those legs. You already know which leg in SplitsBrowser to look at. SplitsBrowser shows you which legs you did the worst on. And then you can also use SplitsBrowser to determine which runners did the best on those legs, which, as we already discussed, is not necessarily the same as the fastest overall time. So if I go back to SplitsBrowser again, let's look again at this one that I originally pointed out. This blue track has a big drop on 6 to 7. So who had the best time on 6 to 7? Well, that would be the track with the horizontal line, right? The one that had no drop relative to the fastest time on that leg. So you can look for the horizontal line. That's one way to find it. But a quicker way is to use the mouse here. You notice that as I mouse over control 6 or 7, there's a vertical line that appears there indicating which control it's looking at. Right here I'm looking at control 7, and if I left click and hold it down, SplitsBrowser will actually shoot up for me the fastest times on that track, the 10 fastest times on that particular leg from 6 to 7. And I can see right there, Cadet Perdigan had a time of 3 minutes 24 seconds. He was the fastest time on that leg of the race. And if I go down to Perdigan, there he is right there. It's this little aqua track. Sure enough, there's the horizontal one. That's the fastest time on that leg. And again, if I go back to left clicking and holding, I can see these are the list of the top finishers on that leg, which are not necessarily fastest overall. You can see this particular guy, Perdigan, he's in the middle of the pack overall, but he did that leg the best. So that's a potential person you could learn from. Right? The runners who did those legs best have the most to teach you about what you did wrong on those legs, so don't neglect those. Pick those shortest times on that leg. The next answer is to find your performance peer group. If you go to enough meets, you'll notice that the same names keep appearing near yours in the results time after time after time. There are certain people whose abilities match your own very closely, or ability to run, ability to navigate, what have you. You'll notice those same names coming up over and over again. When I was comparing my track at Kelly Park, I was comparing it to Hin, who is another racer who shows up a lot. I always finish near him. He and I are constantly racing against each other. And I know that because I've been to many events, and he and I always finish near each other. He's in my performance peer group. These are people whose abilities and skills closely match your own. The nice thing about identifying one or several people like that is that you can consider those people as like alternate versions of you who are doing the exact same tasks. You're doing the same course, the same controls under the same conditions, but they're making different route choices from you. So studying their tracks gives you the best possible quantified estimate of how you could have improved your time by making the same alternate choices that they did. And that's exactly what I did in Livelox a moment ago when I had this out. We were looking at this leg, this particular leg here, where he made an alternate route choice, taking the trail where I tried to cut through, and we saw how that worked out. And I'm using that, using our times there, I can actually quantify how much time I lost on that leg. That's how much I could have improved my performance if I had made the same tactical route choice there that he did. So also a good thing to test for. Look for people in your performance peer group. And then finally, this is sort of a different tack to take with it, is to look for people who did really badly on a particular leg. I love this little funny sign here that's made by the people who do the facetious motivational posters. That it could be the purpose of your life is only to serve as a warning to others. And then there's this quote, which I also really like, from Warren Buffett, the billionaire. Learning from your mistakes makes you smart, but learning from other people's mistakes makes you a genius. Translating that into the use of SplitsBrowser and Livelox, one of the great things about having a database of splits times and GPS tracks is that you can learn from mistakes you don't have to make. Right? You can look at these legs where other people did particularly badly, study them, and see why they did badly and how to avoid making the same mistakes they did. What tactics are you using that saved you from making these mistakes? These are all valuable lessons that you can learn. So going back to SplitsBrowser, we already talked about how to identify some of these things. The top finishers you get from the top of the list. The top people on a particular leg, like this leg from 6 to 7, you use the click and pick out 2 or 3 of the top people there, see if they have GPS tracks. Those are people you want to compare to. And then the performance peer group, you have to study some results from a few different meets to know who comes out near you. But even if you've only done one meet, you can go to Like I can, if I'm studying this track from Miller here, I can go to people who finish near him. Tavere, Perdigan, Coffey, these people had times similar to him, so I could use any of those.